Well, hello. Welcome to Conversations with Dr. Harriet and our special guest, Pastor Joshua Chiles. Hello, how are you?
How are we doing, Dr. Harriet? Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to be with you. I am honored. I am humbled. Listen, before we get started, let me thank you for who you are. Your influence, your impact on the kingdom, on the world is amazing. I just want to thank you for allowing me the opportunity, and we're blessed by what it is that you have done.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I wanted to give a shout out to Pastor Fred Wyatt, who I met you through Pastor Wyatt. And I just knew I had to have you on the show. I just loved your message and just your personality. And so I knew I wanted to share you with all of our viewers around the world. So welcome, welcome.
Bless you. Bless you.
Yeah. So for the couple of people who may not know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, born and raised in a little town called Abbeville, South Carolina. That's upstate South Carolina, about an hour and 15 out of Greenville. I'm a PK. I'm a pastor's kid, a preacher's kid. My mom and my dad, their dads was pastors. So it was kind of passed down. It's something that I ran from for the majority of my life. But eventually we all know that you can't outrun God. And so that was kind of in my blood. That was in my genes. But I was a basketball player. So I ended up getting a scholarship, played basketball at Gardner-Webb University. After that, I coached for a little bit at Furman, ran a couple of AU ball clubs out in California. And then God kind of circumnavigated me back to South Carolina, where it is that I got my master's and I'm finishing up some doctoral work. So God is good. I'm back in Abbeville now, pastoring. I was passed the baton from my parents. I'm pastoring the church here in Abbeville, and I'm also serving as a campus chaplain at Erskine College. So it's a lot going on, but it's a lot of good stuff going on, and I'm thankful for it.
Right. That is so good. And we actually, when we talked, we found out that, I'm a pastor's kid too, in Church of God in Christ. Dad was pastor, superintendent. Mom was a district missionary. So, I understand that PK and running. I definitely understand that. But I found out that our high schools, although I'm probably 20 or so years ahead of you, maybe even more, I'm thinking maybe 30 years ahead of you. But our high schools actually played against each other in South Carolina. It's so crazy.
Yeah. You guys were in our conference. I remember at Abbeville High School, we used to play against you guys. I went to Abbeville High my senior year. We used to play against Pendleton. No ifs, ands, or buts. You guys always brought it, but thankfully we always came out with the W.
Okay. That's too much. It's such a small world. It really is. And I just love how you're, working with the athletes, at the college and just they need so much. And I love that you're able to impact their lives and help them on just to get a foundation, because a lot of them don't have that, in their homes, and to be able to get that to move to the next level is amazing. So God bless you for what you're doing there as well. So before we get started, our topic today is do it different, right?
Do it different.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about that. But before we do, I know you're a part of an amazing compilation of book from at Randy Borders, I think it is.
It's Randy Borders.
Bishop Randy Borders. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that.
From servant leaders. It's a compilation of a whole bunch of pastors, a whole bunch of preachers, teachers, businessmen, CEO, businesswomen, just a whole bunch of people from a whole different walks of life. And they're telling their stories about their losses, about the lessons. And then it gets real good and it gets real juicy, because some of it is talking about the part left out, the things that people don't know. I think a lot of times we miss it when we look at people's lives. And we start comparing our lives to other people and like, man, I can get to that place. I can do this. I can do that. Right. I get it. We can do all things through Christ who strengthens us. But it's a part that's left out that you're not able to go through because it wasn't the call that's on your life. I often tell people, man, you can't walk a mile in my shoes because they're my shoes. You have to walk a mile in your own shoes. And so oftentimes we need to hear the part that was left out that nobody may have ever known that you went through. That brings the healing, that brings the testimony. And so it's an amazing book. You dive into it, you get into it. I promise you, you will not want to get out. You're going to read it a couple of times.
Oh, good. And they can get that on Amazon. And where else can they find it?
JoshuaChiles.com. You can order the book on my website, also through randybordersministries.com. Also, you can get the book through Bishop Randy Borders, his website as well. So the book,
good. I can't wait to order. I can't wait to order it. I love things like that. So let's get into our topic for today. Do it different. Now talk about where that topic came from, and we'll dive right into it.
So first and foremost, let me say this. I've got the opportunity to carry a lot of titles. Pastor, preacher, chaplain, just in a lot of areas, coach, mentor, life coach. But the greatest titles that I carry are father and husband. No ifs, ands, or buts. When I begin to look at the lifestyle of my mom and dad, even though they were saved, they had a lot of struggles. I knew that I had to do it different. And that's where it kind of jump started in my life. And so it's not just for the book. It's not just for a sermon. I really have implemented the do it different mentality into my life. I often say my dad was a phenomenal father, but he wasn't a really good husband. He will be the first to tell you that. And so I believe in doing it different. We use people as examples instead of excuses. I use those people as examples to get to the next level in life, and saying my dad was like this, or my uncle was like this, or my cousin was like this. I just know that I have to use those examples to do it different and carve my own path. We all have a little bit of pioneer in us. We all have a little trailblazer in us. Is if we're willing to step out and be those pioneers and be those trailblazers.
That's really good. And that's right. I mean, we learn from our past, and we learn not to do the same mistakes. I remember my parents being pastors, and I mean, they went hard for everybody else, but they didn't come to PTA. Right. They didn't come to the activities at our school. They came to graduation. I think they were just making sure that we were going to be out that house.
You're speaking to everything that I'm talking about.
Exactly.
Whenever I got married, my beautiful wife, Joshua Chiles, I have 2 children, Joshua and Genesis, which are totally amazing. But when we begin to build our family and our kids begin to get older, and my daughter's playing basketball, my parents, if they had a choice between church or basketball, of course they loved the Lord. They was in church 24 hours. That was the culture. But that's not the way we're going to do things. If it's Bible study or if it's a basketball game, I'm going to be at my daughter's basketball game.
Right.
Be at my son's swim meet. Just those little things become big things in doing it different. Because I don't want to save the world and lose my children inside the home.
Wow, that is so good.
Have my wife not liking me and not wanting to go to church.
Come on now. There you go. Absolutely. Because, resentment pops in. I know growing up, I was very resentful for a lot of things that I felt like I missed out on that I saw other kids do. And, we watched a lot of TV back then. And, that was our entertainment because we couldn't go to the movies. So I said, I'm a little ahead of you. Church people didn't go to the movies back then. And or wear pants, all that good stuff.
Right.
So
that's what I grew up in.
Right. So back then TV was wholesome. And the figures that you saw on TV, they would sit down and they would have dinner together and they would have family time. And so that's what I grew up looking at on TV. And so when my little family came along, that was one thing we did. We sat at the table and had conversations, like I saw growing up. And it made so much difference in my kids' life. So now that everybody's all grown up, we still love getting together and just, having dinner together at the table. And, and people don't realize that's an awesome, bonding time for your kids.
Yeah. I think that's totally amazing. And that's one thing that we try to set in place even in our homes, because this, Dr. Harriet, the family dynamics are totally different. The structure it no longer looks like the man and the woman and the boy and the girl. It no longer looks like that. And we've allowed that to bleed into the household as well, even at moments when it's time for us to sit down and eat. And so about 50 to 70% of the families, if you were to go and eat dinner with them, you'll see the son upstairs watching TV eating. You'll see the daughter on her phone. You'll see the father standing up and maybe the mom on the computer. But like you, that's one thing that we wanted to be a staple in our home. And so it's different. It doesn't look like everybody else. But when we go to eat, I sit down, my wife sit down, my son sits down, my daughter sits down. We put the phones away and we how the day went. And I think we have to follow. We're either going to follow the culture of the world, we're going to either follow the church, or we're going to follow the kingdom. I choose the kingdom because the kingdom is full of structure. The kingdom is full of order. And I believe what it is that you just talked about with your family, even with my family, we got to get back to that structure and get back to that order.
That's right. And just, at dinner time, turn the TV off.
Turn it off.
Doesn't have to be on unless it's a game, unless it's the playoffs. We're watching the playoffs now. But, yeah, unless it's the playoffs going on, TV's off, phones are off. We're not, on our phones. It drives me crazy when we go out to eat and we see everybody at the table the kids have tablets, the parents are on their phone, no conversation. And so when I'm giving advice to people about, when they ask me about how your kids, how are they so successful? What are things that you've done? Those are things little things like that, just being at the table and just asking them, how was your day? How did everything go today? And, and finding out what they're interested in. A lot of parents don't even know what their kids' interests are.
Right.
We may have not gotten this when we were coming up, but we can do it differently when it comes to our kids. So I love that. So what else are you doing differently in your life?
So, of course, ministry. That's what we do a lot of. That's who we are. I'll tell you where it comes from. It comes from the book of Joshua and Joshua. That's my favorite biblical.
There you go. How did you know that?
I love Joshua because Joshua was one of the only leaders biblically that started well, but he also ended well. And I think the reason why is because he understood the greatest level of leadership is self-leadership. Can you first and foremost lead yourself? A lot of people, it's easy to lead others, but can you lead you out of a bad situation? Would you want to follow you? And so as I pastor, as I'm a husband, as I'm a father, as I'm a businessman, as I'm a life coach, I've implemented 3 keys into my life that came out of the book of Joshua. I told you my parents were pastors and they passed the baton to my wife and I about 3 years ago. And my mother and father had pastored the church for about 30 years. And so the dynamics, I tell people oftentimes that we weren't trying to build an ark, we had to turn an ark. I just knew, Dr. Harriet, that I could not do it like Moses. My mom and dad are like Moses. They're iconic. And this is key for you to know. This is key for all the listeners to understand that miracle signs and wonders will get you out of Egypt, will get you out of a bad place. But if you want to go into the promised land, it's going to take leadership. And so my parents worked miracle signs and wonders. Of course, they baptized. They were at every event that somebody had. But I knew that I had to lead them. And so the first key and the first principle that we have implemented into our life is understanding how to clarify what's dead. Now, what do you know in the book of Joshua? Well, let me give it to you. I'm glad that you asked. The first thing that God tells Joshua in the first chapter of the book of Joshua is Moses, my servant, is dead. Now, this really doesn't make sense because we know that Joshua was Moses' aide. Why would he tell him Moses is dead? Well, I honestly believe that God told him that because there's some things you have to know that are dead in your life that God is not going to resurrect. And it's key for me in doing it different to know when something is dead and not try to breathe life into something that I can't resuscitate. Yeah. I think in life, a lot of times there are a lot of dead things that it's time to move on from But watch this. We stop like if you saw something dead, here it is. This is graphic. If you saw some roadkill in the road, you're not gonna drive. You're not gonna stop and try to resuscitate that dead animal. You're gonna keep going. That's what God wants us to do, and a lot of times in life, because we can't be tagged and tethered to things that God allowed to die in our life. And I talk about it all the time, Dr. Harriet, with relationships.
Oh, wow. I was going there. That was going to be my next stop.
Right. Could it have been?
Tell us about that. Relationships, that's where so many people get lost, trying to hold on to something that it's not there. It's over. Move on. Talk about that.
They get lost because, and here it is, Dr. Harriet, I hope they don't kick me out of the doctoral program. I hope they don't say that I'm blasphemous or I'm screaming out hypocrisy. I think for Christians, a lot of times the reason they can't let go is directly connected to the God that they serve.
Wow.
Because I think a lot of Christians have the Messiah and the Savior complex, that they never want to give up on anything. But we have to understand this. God is God. That's why he never gave up on us.
Right.
But some situations, let me help somebody, you have to give up on because it's not going to get any better. I do a lot of counseling with men and with women. If they hadn't married you in 5 years, in 7 years, what are you still waiting on? Here it is.
Right.
You owe it to yourself. It's a standard that you hold to stop trying to breathe life into something that died 5 years ago. And we do this time and time again in relationships. And then we'll wake up 20 years later, unfulfilled, unsatisfied, discombobulated, depressed, and everything else, because we keep trying to breathe life in something that doesn't want to arise. It was God that had to breathe the breath of life into Adam. He can do it. If God doesn't breathe life into the relationship, it's not going to be a living being. And I think we have to understand that.
That's right. And even just, we have to realize that the seasons that, even in just friendships and relationships, even within ministry, that there's a season for everything. And we can't just keep holding on because we think, that God put us there. So, but if it's not working out, now it's time to move on.
And we talked about it a little bit about the piece that I have coming out in 2022, and I'm excited about it. One of the reasons why, and I don't want to stay on relationships, but you threw it out there, so here you
go.
So in the relationship piece, one reason why the relationship won't live and we don't know what's dead is because we never made commandments. Okay, so we have the 10 commandments. The book is called the 12 Commandments. The 12 Commandments of dating, and so it's something.
The 12 Commandments of dating.
You don't
love it,
Harriet. You gonna like
I love it.
So it's some things that you have to demand that are necessary before we even get into it. Before I gotta breathe life into you and you gotta breathe life into me. We ain't even gotta go through all of that if we go through these 12 commandments and you know what it is that I want and I know what it is that you want. And so I think we have to hold a higher standard. Even God himself, he gave boundaries to Adam and Eve. He told them, what, you can eat out of everything in this garden, this one tree. I'm demanding you. I'm commanding you that you can't eat off of. And so, I think
I love that. That's going to be good. That's going to bless so many lives. Wow. Because I think that so many times that people just, a lot of people have self-esteem issues and, I'm not enough syndrome that they may have, and they think they have to settle, but you don't have to settle.
Right. And it's a mental thing. And so I just gave you, in doing it different, first and foremost, you have to clarify the dead, but you just said it. Next, you have to clarify your decisions. Who are you going to be? Who are you going to walk with? Who are you going to talk with? Here it is. How are you going to do it? In the book of Joshua, we're still in the first chapter.
There you go.
Joshua, be strong and courageous. Now, once again, Dr. Harriet, this doesn't make sense to me. Why? Because Joshua was a warrior. This is what he did for a living. He was a fighter. Why would God tell him this? Well, once again, I'm glad that you asked. Because it doesn't deal with the physical. It deals with the mental. You got to be strong and courageous. Why? Because these same people that you came out of Egypt with, If you get the game twisted, they're going to take you right back to Egypt. And that goes along with relationships. That goes along with the friends that you hang out with, the people that you have in your circle. You have to know that they have decided to go into the promised land just like you. Too many times we're trying to pull people into the promised land instead of them willingly going in. What does that look like? Well, it looks like you have 12 people that go out and spy out the land, and you have two people that want to go in, but 10 don't want to go in. The negative usually wins over the positive. That's why you have to already know who you are. You have to already decide on where it is that you're going to go. And so I had to make those type decisions early. I was a basketball guy, right? I was from the hood. I was from the neighborhood, but I had to make decisions early. Listen, man, I got a scholarship. I can't hang out with you like the way that I used to.
Wow, that's good.
I can't do the things that I used to do. I can't go the same places that I used to go. And even though they may call you stuck up, you know, I often say it like this, Dr. Harriet, God has blessed us to be in do right positions. But the problem is we don't have do right spirits.
Oh,
yeah.
Good.
Yeah. It was God that told Cain, if you do right, all you got to do is do right. But he didn't have a do right spirit. Why do we see so many icons, so many influencers falling from the top? Because they are in do right positions, but they don't have do right spirits.
Wow, that is so good. So good. You know, I even want to talk about how doing it differently in every aspect of your life. You know, I think about that. You know, I always say I have two sets of families. My girls are 13 months apart. Wow. And when they were on their way to college, one was graduating from high school, the other one was going on to college, and God blessed us with a little surprise.
Wow.
we weren't expecting that boy to come along. So the first time around, we sowed into our children. Everything was about those kids. I mean, we went to everything. We didn't miss anything. We pushed the girls, and I mean, they are super successful even now. And so we put everything into them, but we did not sow into our marriage. You know, I felt like if we're sowing into our kids, then we'll be okay. But almost at that time, whenever I felt like, okay, they're getting ready to go off to college, I think I'm going to go off myself. I think it's going to be it. Right. And then God surprised us with this little one.
Wow.
And so we knew, okay, the next time around with this young man, we had to do it differently. So in this time, in this part of our marriage, we sowed into us. We did our date nights. You know, it wasn't all about the child, although it is, you know, about your child, but we made sure to sow into us to do it differently. And so we have to remind ourselves, even in marriage, that, you know, in every season, because every marriage has a season. You have your beginning, you have your, you know, where you're getting your grind on trying to build your wealth and build your family. And then you have the part where, okay, the kids are going off to college. Here comes our empty nest syndrome, you know, and then you have your retirement time. So each level, we have to learn how to do it different to be successful. What do you say about that?
No. I'm telling you, you are right on it. Once again, get the opportunity. My wife and I mentor and give spiritual counseling to a lot of young couples. And now we're finding out we're giving a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, coaching, whatever word that you want to use, whatever terminology you want to use to older couples. But I think what you said, once again, is key. And people need to understand that. Like the world would tell you, invest, pour into your kids. I get it. But what happens when the kids leave the house?
What happens?
That's what I often tell them. Me and my wife have to be best friends because we have to know how to deal with each other, love each other, rock with each other, roll with each other, even when the kids are there or when they're not there, because it's going to get to a point where the kids not going to want to be there. They're going to be looking at each other in the face and have nothing to talk about. Right. We had an amazing opportunity over the last year and some change during COVID. You had an amazing opportunity to get to know your spouse on a whole nother level. People they came closer, and then we see more and more divorce rise. Why? Because they never took the time out, like you just said, to work to do it different in their marriage. My marriage is not going to look like my mom and my dad's.
Right.
Because it's not their marriage. My marriage is not going to look like my grandparents. Now, like Joshua, I can take what it is that Moses had. I can take some good out of it. I can take the laws of God and work with and run with those things, but it still has to be our own. And we'll never know if it's our own until we get into it together. And so I think you're key, especially speaking towards the marriages, because I think what we do is, Dr. Harriet, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you can rebuke me if I'm wrong. we're too busy looking at people on Instagram and people on Facebook looking at their marriages. When I'll be honest with you, 80% of those marriages are falling apart.
Absolutely.
They're just doing that for the gram.
Right. And all we see is the pictures. I tell people all the time, stop comparing.
Yes.
Don't compare yourself. I tell the young people, I tell the married couples, the singles, don't compare yourself to other people, because that steals your joy.
That's
absolutely. Because what you're seeing in majority of the time is not real.
Right.
They post what they want you to see. They post the happy times. They're not telling you, hey, we're in trouble. They're not going to tell you that because they're so worried about what they will think. Exactly. I'm a big opponent to, who cares what they think? Who are the they anyway?
Who is that? Who is they? Right. Who are they? Somebody please tell me, who are they?
Please tell me.
And why do they matter so much?
Right.
That's the question.
Exactly.
Comparison is killing relationships. Me and my wife, we made up in our mind that we're not trying to be better than Dr. Harriet and her husband. We're not trying to be better than this person. We're not competing with those people. We're competing against ourselves. Will tomorrow be better than today? And will the next day be better than that day? Each and every day, we got to get better for each other. We don't compare. One of the biggest issues is we do too much comparison and then we compete. So we have a thing that we say around our house. We say that we are cooperating instead of competing. Right. We cooperate with each other. We come together. We work together. We compromise with each other. Whatever it is, but we're not going to compete against each other. That defeats the whole.
That is so good. That's so good. We're running out of time, but I really want to jump into even in the marketplace. With your job, now you're back at work. A lot of people were out for a whole year. Now they're back at work. Do it differently, even at work. Do better at work. Clean your desk up. Yeah, be on time. Talk about that for a second.
And can I say that through the grace of God, I'm in the position that I'm in as a pastor, but also in the marketplace because I did it different. I didn't do it like everybody else. So Erskine started off as a theological seminary, Erskine Theological Seminary, founded in 1838. Then it branched off into a school. From 1838 till 2020, they never had an African-American chaplain. So you're looking at the first and the only in the schools.
Congratulations. So awesome.
I'm thankful for it, but it's because I did it different. Here it is. People are going to hate regardless. But I carried myself different. I walk different. I talk different. I act different.
That's good.
What's the basketball mentality? If you own time, you're late. So in meetings, I don't show up just walking in the door, right? I show up early. I show up 15 minutes. And here it is, Dr. Harriet. I'm over prepared when I go into the meeting. How in the world can me, as an African-American man, sit on an executive leadership board that has never had an African-American sit on the board? I had to do it different, right? I had to take it to another level. I'm a Kobe Bryant fan. It's a Mamba mentality that you got to have, right? Yeah. It's at all costs. You want to go to the best, want to be the best of the best, and want to go to the highest level that you can go to. But in order to go to those highest levels, you're going to have to do something that nobody else is doing or willing to do. Once again, I told you I love Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant said this: if I could get up at 4 a.m, work out, go take my kids to school, come back and work out, pick my kids up from whatever they have, then go work out, that'll be 3 workouts a day. He said by year 10, if I did that, I'll be so far than everybody else. They'll just be playing catch up. When you do it different and work like that, you'll find yourself ahead of everybody else. And that's been my mindset. That's not to be arrogant, but you got to be willing to work to get to where you want to be. That's doing it different. I know we're running out of time. It was Joshua. Yeah. Joshua told them when they wanted water, Moses struck the rock, or Moses was supposed to speak to the rock. Joshua said, I'm not doing that. You better go out there and dig your own wells. we gotta work for the water that we want to drink. That's doing it different. That hard.
Doing it different. Wow. You know what? We're out of time, but just want to thank you again for being our guest on Conversations with Dr. Harriet right here on the Power Network. Thank you so much, Pastor Joshua Chiles. You have to come back again. Will you come back?
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Well, we will see everybody next time. Take care.
God bless. Thank you so much.